Do you have a connection with a big event in history? Are you trying to find lost branches of your family tree or trying to solve a mystery in your past? I'm Sian Williams, and this is My Family Secrets Revealed. We've gathered a team of historical and ancestry experts to solve intriguing family mysteries.
Well, he told a good story.
He's a real mystery. Nobody really knows anything about him.
After poring over birth records, doing DNA tests and building family trees,
this is where you're from.
I had no idea.
they'll reunite people with long-lost relatives.
Can we share the castle?
Prove links to famous faces.
We are actually related to him. That's incredible.
And solve family puzzles about long-lost relatives.
It's heartbreaking, but I don't know what happened to him.
There'll be scandal along the way.
That's not comfortable.
No, but that's the nature of that society.
Stories of heroism.
He's posted to a terrible campaign called the Campaign in Gallipoli.
There'll be unexpected reunions. Tears of joy.
Gosh, that's amazing.
And a chance for people to find out who their ancestors really were.
It's quite a lot to discover.
That's the biggest shock. And the best one, too.
Coming up today, a man on the trail of his father's past.
Can't get me breath for what we've got so far, let alone what, it's just amazing.
The hunt for a family hero.
Actually, HMS Fortune, as it was alight, burning and going down, it was still firing at the enemy.
And a connection to a famous adventure novel.
It's like the end of the story, really.
Welcome to Capesthorne Hall, a historic stately home in Macclesfield in Cheshire, where people from all over the UK have been flocking to have their questions answered. People of all ages and backgrounds have come here in the hope of solving their family mysteries.
On both sides of my family, I have ancestors who were scuttlers, which is the Manchester Salford version of Peaky Blinders, and I just want to find out more about it.
I've always been told related to Guy Fawkes since I was told about 20-odd years ago, so I just came to see if there's any truth to the rumour.
To help them on their road to success, our team of experts, including Ancestry DNA expert Brad Argent, who explores whether one woman has a unique connection to a legendary British novel.
The story of King Solomon's Mines was based on my grandfather.
He must have been something of a character in the family.
Law lecturer and historian Onyeka Nubia. And historian Tessa Dunlop, who reveals the remarkable experience of a World War II soldier.
He was a globetrotter in this war. He really saw the underbelly of a world war.
But first, today's show begins with a man trying to understand his past so that he can inspire his family's future. Stephen McWilliams wants to find out about his military father and an extended family he never knew.
I know very, very little about my parents, and certainly nothing about their parents. I would think I was around 14 when my father died. And of course, young guys spend a lot of time with the father, which I never had that opportunity. And my mother really wasn't very forthcoming with information about my father because obviously it was upsetting for her to discuss it. In excess of 40 years ago, I got divorced, and of course, when you get divorced, families split, we move away. I have a daughter who's in California. I haven't seen for maybe 20 years. And then 4 years ago, my daughter contacted me on social media, and it was quite a, as you can imagine, quite a thing. And I then discovered that I have two grandchildren, and this is what I want out of this show, is information that I can give to my grandchildren.
Stephen McWilliams, I gather you've joined us all the way from Spain.
That's right.
Hence your lovely tan.
Well, yeah, thank you.
So what are you hoping to discover today? We have here, I should say, a picture of your father, Edward, with your mother, Anna.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just really want to know more about my family.
And your siblings, you have not had any contact with for some time?
No, I haven't. You know, we lost contact maybe a long time ago, really.
OK, well, we took your parents' names, Edward McWilliams and Anna Jean Stevenson, and I'm going to introduce you, first of all, to their marriage certificate. There we can see your father getting married just towards the very end of the Second World War to Anna. There were two interesting things about this marriage certificate. It told us his rank or profession, but this gave us his military number.
Oh, right.
OK, which was going to allow us to have a much more detailed look at what he got up to. And we can see there he was with the Royal Inniskillen Fusiliers, a Northern Irish regiment. And we found out that your father joined up very young, aged 18, in 1934.
Wow.
And here we have your father's military record, or part of it. It was quite extensive. I'm going to take you through, if I may, the various different countries and experiences your father is privy to within the first few years, not just of war, but in fact of his military career. By 1936, he was over in Palestine, dealing with the Second Arab Revolt. Of course, because of the extreme anti-Semitism on the continent, in Germany and in Eastern Europe, you see a heightened number of Jewish immigrants arriving in Palestine, which puts great tension on the region between the two communities, hence the reason why there was this revolt. And Palestine is within our empire. We acquired it, I think, in the First World War. So he then moves from there to Malaysia, and he's in Malaysia at the outbreak of war. It's lucky he doesn't stay in Malaysia because, of course, that gets turned over by the Japanese in a couple of years' time. In fact, he goes next to India. He moves from India, as many Indian troops did as well, to the Middle East. So already,
gracious, yeah.
By the beginning of the war, if you can keep up, we've done Palestine, we've done Malaysia, India, and now we're in the Middle East. Before the era of EasyJet,
just a bit,
your
yeah.
father is really experiencing life and war at the coalface. I mentioned the Middle East. You see here an article in the Sunday Dispatch. British troops land in Iraq to checkmate Hitler's drive for vital oil wells. We acquired Iraq in the First World War. In fact, at the end of the First World War, our empire had never been bigger, this kind of out-of-control giant. And as the Sunday Dispatch there references, it was all about oil. There was a sort of coup in favour of the Germans that we quickly sought to squash. And your father, by this stage, was in the Persia and Iraq force. And that worked in conjunction with the Soviets, and your father again was part of this, entering Iran from the north, again to safeguard the oil wells.
He was a busy guy, wasn't he?
Yeah. You'd have had a suntan better than yours by the
Well,
end
yeah,
of this.
quite possibly.
He doesn't end his war there, because your father ends up in Burma. It's quite extraordinary to think what your father was witness to, really, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable.
What's really interesting about your father's record, and has been fascinating to reference, is I think we talk about the Second World War, but we tend to always reference it as a European war, you know, and the Blitz and the D-Day landings and what happens near to home. But your father, he was a globetrotter in this war. He really saw the underbelly of all the different bits of a world war.
Wow. It's a bit of an eye-opener, isn't it, this?
How does it make you feel differently about your father? Does it help explain him a bit?
Yeah, it does, yeah. Yeah, because he was quite a solemn guy. He wasn't sort of a bouncy, happy guy. He was a thinker. And now you think, well, he's done all of this and ends up in Birmingham. It just seems very, very odd, you know, I don't know. I never spoke about it at all. I'm not totally convinced that my mother knew where he was. You know, because she never spoke about it either.
Let's just go back to that marriage certificate of your parents in Birmingham in 1945. The name of your father's father, so your grandfather, he pops down as Edward McWilliams, so a second Edward, who he notes is deceased. And I want now to take you from this marriage certificate to the birth certificate of your father. So it's a bit confusing, we've got two Edwards, but we're now going to go to Edward, your father's birth certificate, which, as I'm sure you know, is 1915. His mother is named as Lizzie McWilliams, but it should be the name of a father, and there isn't. And the informant on the birth certificate is Susan McWilliams, who was Lizzie's mother. Which leads us to suspect your father was in fact born out of wedlock in the First World War.
Oh.
Not something he was perhaps comfortable with because he fakes a name of a father on his marriage certificate.
Interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, in those days, you didn't admit always to being born out of wedlock.
That's right.
But let's stick with Lizzie. You know that your father had a brother.
Yes. Sandy. I think it was Sandy.
It was Sandy. Here's Sandy.
Wow, look at this.
Yeah, he also had a significant military record.
Really?
So, yeah, quite a pair.
Yeah.
So there's Sandy. In fact, he was named originally Alexander and called Sandy for short.
Oh, right, OK.
He was also, incidentally, born out of wedlock, Alexander. Now, let's go back to Lizzie, Eliza, your grandmother, if we may. We've got your father, Edward, and so too Sandy, your uncle, Alexander, as he was born. And we love a happy ending here. Lizzie, to be truly happy in that day and age of the nuclear family, what did she need? She needed a husband. And we can give her one.
Oh, wow.
1921, William McKinney marries Elizabeth McWilliams. And I can also tell you that that marriage bore fruit. Adding to your family tree, I can name an uncle of yours called Robert and two more girls, so two aunts called Lily and Ruth. So your grandmother actually had 5 children.
Wow. That's why I can't get my breath for what we've got so far, let alone, you know, it's just amazing.
Stick with that thought. Here's a picture. Can you identify the two people in this picture?
No, it'd be easier for me to identify the brick. I have no clue.
Well, that's actually a picture of your father.
Wow.
With his mother, Lizzie.
Goodness gracious.
Where do you think we might have got this picture from?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm wondering. That's what I've been thinking about. That. Somebody's got some photographs somewhere, so there's a person.
Stephen may have already learned about his father's incredible military career, but stay tuned, as he's about to meet some of his extended family for the first time. Our next story sees Brad try to crack Norma Shaw's family rumour that her grandfather inspired one of Britain's greatest adventure novels.
I would like to find out if my grandfather, Harry Hill Felton, it was the inspiration for the main character in King Solomon's Mines book. I've come along today with great anticipation, but also with trepidation and nervousness to see what's been found, if anything.
So, Norma, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming today, and thank you for bringing us this story of King Solomon's Mines and the potential connection between your family through Harry Hill Felton.
Well, when my aunt, my mum's sister, passed away in Perth in Australia, she found a sheet of paper amongst her mum's belongings which said that the story of King Solomon's Mines and the main character, Alan Quatermain, was based on my grandfather, Harry Hill Felton. It's something I hadn't heard of prior to that. So it was really quite a revelation, and even more of a revelation if it was true.
The book, King Solomon's Mines, by H. Rider Haggard, was published in 1885, and we know it was turned into a number of films. This was the first English adventure set in Africa. right? And the public ate it up. For that story to be true, he must have been something of a character in the family, right? To have that kind of the weight to carry off that story. So let's try and get a little bit more information on who your grandfather was.
Right.
Harry was a military man.
Yes.
And we know he served up until 1908, and then he left the army. But then, of course, when war broke out again, he served again and was a marksman in the First World War.
Yes.
Now, we know before the war he went and served in quite a few different places. Singapore, for example. So there was something of the adventurer about him before the Great War.
Yes.
Now, of course, the strong connection between the Quatermain character, there's a connection to Africa. So what we needed to do is to say, OK, can we find him in Africa? We went digging, all right? And this is what we were able to find. Now, these are medal rolls, right? Now, a lot of the First World War service records were destroyed. About 60% of them were destroyed in the Second World War. So what we have to do is use ancillary records to try and piece together what somebody's service was. And these medal rolls, even though they don't tell us much, in this case, they actually tell us quite a bit. So we can see here, there he is, Harry Hilfelton. There's a date there, 10th of April, 1915, and in brackets it says 4A. 4A is an army code, because they like to abbreviate everything. And 4A refers to German East Africa.
Right.
So we know he's in Africa. So, OK, well, here we have this dashing young man, served everywhere. We see him in Africa. So you can kind of see how maybe bits of the story start falling into place.
Mm-hmm.
But then we need to go, OK, how can we prove a connection to him and Alan Quatermain? So we start looking at the author, Rider Haggard, and seeing if we can find any reference anywhere that might give some clue to who the inspiration for that was. And you have to remember, this was published in 1885, right? So he's got to have got the genesis of that story some time ago. And when we did our research, we found a picture of this man. Do you know who this is?
No.
This is Frederick Selu. Now, all the references we've found suggest he was the inspiration for Alan Quatermain.
Right.
Now, he was born in 1851, right? So he has plenty of time to build up that reputation. And in fact, he has quite the reputation as an explorer in Africa. But there is a family connection between you and this man, because he served in the same regiment as Harry Hilfelton. In fact, he died in 1917 in German East Africa.
Wow.
So what I think's happened is here you have this man, right, who served in the same regiment. He may well have met this man.
Mm-hmm.
He's told the story that he'd served alongside the inspiration for Alan Quatermain.
Uh-huh.
And that's just got passed down and consolidated into this story. And why wouldn't it? Because look at Harry, you know? He'd been around the world. There was something about him and the life that he led that had the adventurer in it.
Uh-huh. A family myth.
But all myths start from something, and that's one that we've cracked here today.
Right.
So Norma's grandfather may not have been the inspiration for Alan Quatermain, but she has discovered an amazing connection to the man who was. And Brad has another surprise in store for Norma later on in the programme.
So there's one more thing we've got to show you.
Can't believe you found that. I really can't.
Earlier, Stephen learned about his father's extraordinary role in World War II. Now, Tessa's about to reveal an even greater discovery.
Where do you think we might have got this picture from?
Somebody's got some photographs somewhere, so there's a person.
The cogs are turning. Let's just go back to the family tree, if we may, and it's kind of a maze, and not everyone's on this.
It's getting busy, isn't it?
It is getting busy. Stick with me. So we've got Eliza, right, with originally the unknown father of your father, Edward, and Alexander, Sandy, Uncle Sandy. And there we can see Stephen pops out at the end. But tracking on our other side, we know she marries William McKinney, your step-grandfather, therefore, and they have a Robert. And Robert had a son called David. The photographs came from David. And David has very kindly travelled from Scotland to tell you he's your first cousin.
Oh, well.
David, come on over.
Hello, David. How are you?
It's good to see you.
Amazing, isn't it, all this?
And a sister, Denise.
This is
another cousin.
Hello.
So my mum used to show me the picture of Lizzie and Teddy. He was called Teddy.
Stephen's dad was called Teddy.
Stephen's dad was called Teddy.
Wow.
What's going on in your head at the moment?
I'm just absolutely, I just can't believe all this. I'm blown away. I really am. Fantastic.
Well, listen, you've got a lot to catch up on, I expect you to. So thank you both for making the trip here today. It's been, immense sharing your story with you, David and Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Wow. What a day. I mean, the photograph of my father with his mother when he was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3. It's just fantastic. It's going to be a fantastic present for my grandchildren. And they're going to have plenty now to study and look at and realise some ambitions that they have. And they'll know where their families come from now, which is really nice.
It's just stunning that this has just happened. It's just stunning.
Stephen McWilliams came to the show longing to know more about who his father was. Not only have we uncovered his father's incredible military career, we've also united him with relatives that he never knew he had. The Battle of Jutland in 1916 was the defining naval engagement of the First World War, effectively closing off the northern seas to Germany. History graduate Peter Jones and his father, Tom, want to find out if they have a connection to this historic battle.
My name's Peter Jones and I'm from Liverpool. My dad's dad, Tom Jones, was the brother of William Jones. We're just trying to see whether they were actually brothers, because on the 1901 census, William was listed as a stepson of their dad. Yet in the 1911 census, he's listed as a son. So we're just trying to see why he goes from stepson to son, and just trying to see if we're related to him. We're pretty sure that he was in the Battle of Jutland, and he did die there. Everyone would like to have a war hero within the family, and it appears that William Jones could be our war hero. It'd just be amazing to find out whether he's a stepbrother or an actual brother, and then have he had any children, and whether I've got a whole new family maybe somewhere out there, and just to meet new people.
Peter Jones, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
And bringing us this fascinating case.
Thanks.
Now, we're going to be investigating this potential blood relative, a William Jones, who you think and hope is your great-uncle, yes?
Yeah, because he's like a stepson on one census and another one he's a son, so we just want to see whether he's like actually related to me or what he is, basically.
And you've ascertained already that this young man, William Jones, died during the Battle of Jutland.
Yeah. It was like the biggest battle, the naval battle of the war, wasn't it? So,
it was, and it kind of, historically, I think, somehow got a little bit overshadowed by the Somme that came next, which was the most horrific killing machine. So let's first of all ascertain whether this young man, William, was in fact a relative. And to do that, we need to track his birth. In 1892, you can see there in West Derby, William is born to a Mary Ellen Major. Now, you will notice there is an absence on that birth certificate. Can you pick it out?
The father, is it?
There is no father named, which means he was illegitimate. It was a bit of an inauspicious start for William because he's born in a workhouse, Walton Workhouse.
Oh, God, yeah. That's quite sad, isn't it?
Well, it's not
great.
An ideal start, minus a father and minus any means of having a child anywhere better than a workhouse. And the workhouses were pretty rotten places. So let's have a quick look at the family tree as it stands. Here are you at the bottom. We're going on up to your grandfather, Thomas Jones. And the question mark is, of course, to what extent was Thomas related to his brother, William Jones? Because was it a half-brother, a step-brother, a full brother? What's vital is for us to be able to connect Mary, William's mother, with the Jones that's in your family tree.
Yeah.
And we have Mary Ellen Major there as the mother of both Thomas Jones and William Major Jones. And I'll show you why. Because on that census, I believe you've already seen, the 1901 census, we have William Major, with his mother's maiden name now as his middle name. He is the stepson, as you'd identified, of none other than William Jones, your great-grandfather.
Yeah.
William Jones has married Mary. You see, they're head of family and wife.
Yeah.
And then she goes on to have several more children.
Yeah.
OK, that's confirming, therefore, that Mary's the mother of both your grandfather, Thomas, and so too William, your great-uncle.
Great to find out that I am actually related to him. That's why we came.
Now, let's track William. What does he do next? We're going to go to 1912. Here is his service record. You'll see stamped at the top, Portsmouth. Portsmouth and Plymouth were the kind of heart of the British Navy. So we see that William Jones, born, as we know, in 1892, has, by 1912, signed up and joined the Navy. He joins as a coal porter, and he's a stoker, second-class stoker to begin with. Looking at his naval record, he has quite a career, 9 different vessels. He's promoted to stoker first class. So a hard-working lad, and I think probably about the same age as you. How old are you, if you don't want me asking?
23.
23. So here he is signing up, joining up at age 20 in 1912.
That's a bit mad, isn't it?
So we now track him on a little bit. We know that by March 1914, he's joined the crew of HMS Fortune, which is a new breed of destroyer. I think about 20 of them were built, and, well, that's his home, really, for the next 2 years. And sadly, history tells us that HMS Fortune doesn't make it beyond June 1916, and, of course, you know why. Here we have the Battle of Jutland. There's a bit of code breaking goes on, and we ascertain that the German fleet are trying to relinquish our stringent control of their northern coastline, because, of course, the British blockade, that's our great fixation during the war. We've got to somehow work out a way of effectively starving the Germans of resources and fuel and food. And the Germans think they've got to somehow break this stronghold, which is why you get this almighty clash. Now, what's interesting is we're supreme in terms of our navy at this point. So naval supremacy means we can throw at the Germans a greater number of ships, greater manpower. It's been seen historically as a somewhat dubious victory because of the extent of the loss. Statistically, I think it was 6,000 British men died. The Germans failed to break the blockade, and their naval capacity was severely weakened because, as I say, they didn't have as big a navy of us in the first place. So British claimed it as a victory, but in terms of the moral impact of such a loss, that was tough to come to terms with. Actually, HMS Fortune, as it was alight, burning and going down, it was still firing at the enemy. So really, an unpleasant way to die.
Yeah, no, that would be horrible, wouldn't it?
How
old was he then?
24-year-old lad.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
a year for me. Be dead, it's horrible, isn't it?
We know that he got married to an Alice Buckley in 1912. So the same year he joins the Navy, he also gets married. And that same year as well, he has a baby, also called Alice.
He was busy then.
He was busy. He's already joined the Navy by the time baby Alice comes along in October 1912. And We also know that he got a bit of leave because the year he dies in 1916, he has not just one more baby, but in fact two. Margaret, you can see named there, do you see 1916?
Yeah.
Is actually one of two twins. So Alice, his wife, already has baby Alice, and then she has twins, Margaret and William Jr.
Oh, right, okay. More family, yeah. So just research into that after this. And...
Good luck to you, and well done for engaging, really, with an extraordinary life. You know, it's so short,
yeah,
but...
did a lot in the time.
Yeah, really compact, wasn't it? They got fitted so much in.
Yeah, thank you for all your help.
Was it helpful for you to sort of fill in those gaps? I know you knew some of it, but a lot of it you didn't know, like this big extended family you now have.
Yeah, first I found out, no, he was definitely related to us, and he has had kids afterwards, and it's exciting and interesting.
You've got some more detective work to do, really, haven't you?
Yeah, well, me and my dad, I think we'll get on it.
Good luck. Thanks very much for coming to share your story today.
Nice to meet you, thank you.
Nice to meet you too, Peter.
Another success story, as our team confirms Peter's connection to a war hero and also reveals an extended family he knew nothing about. Coming up, will Norma discover the final resting place of her great-great-grandfather?
I can't imagine what it was like to go from London to that spot on the map at that point in history.
Sir Douglas Bader is Britain's most famous wartime pilot. He lost both his legs in a crash, but went on to become a hero of World War II. Julian Amos from Warwickshire wants to know if he's connected to him.
My name's Julian Amos, and I'm a motorcycle development test rider, which means I ride prototype motorcycles and help the manufacturers develop. I want to find out if there's a genuine link between our family and the family of Sir Douglas Bader. Douglas Bader was actually one of my childhood heroes. He's still one of my heroes. He joined the RAF initially in the very late 1920s. But in 1931 was involved in an accident where he crashed his aircraft and lost both his legs as a result. The RAF wouldn't allow him to fly. But when the Second World War kicked off in 1939, they needed pilots. So he got his job back. He's probably one of the best-known Battle of Britain fighter pilots.
Group Captain Bader led the flight past in his Spitfire on Battle of Britain Day, and what a sight it was.
In Bader's earliest biography, Reach for the Sky, on the very first page was a mention of his great-grandfather, whose name was John Stuart Amos. And that's what I want to find out. I want to know if that's the same Amos family as my own. My grandfather, Joseph Amos, was in the Royal Naval Air Service in the First World War. Dad joined the RAF just after the war in the early 50s. And my uncle, he was also in the RAF. There's a family history there. I was the first Amos not to go in since the formation of the RAF. What I do for a living pales into insignificance, really, compared with someone like Douglas Bader, but it's the closest thing to flying without leaving the ground.
Julian, welcome.
Thank you very much.
What a fascinating man.
He's absolutely fantastic, isn't he? Yeah, a real hero. So that's why I'll be amazed if you found this connection, but it would be wonderful.
So he's very strong-willed. Mm-hmm. He joins the Royal Flying Corps, and then he has this accident and crashes. And so I can kind of understand how you feel a connection with this guy, because he's something of a maverick.
Absolutely, yeah.
But in order to try and work this out, we need to have a good, hard look at the family trees of both yourself and Douglas Bader.
Yes.
And if you step back through the Amos line here, you can see the name changing.
Yes.
And we've actually traced that line right back to about 1700. So we've gone back as far as we can. And of course, the other thing that we did is we went out. We went out and we looked at both sides of the family. So now we have to have a look at Bader's tree. Okay. And there's that John Stuart Amos,
yes,
right, that you were talking about. a Francis Amos, right? So there's definitely this, without a doubt, a strong Amos line in there. And then the question comes, do they cross over? It's important to remember the names change a little bit, but whereabouts are these people located? So we've gone back to roughly the same points in history. And unfortunately,
What a way.
there's a little bit of distance between the two. And so it's highly unlikely that your Amos-Ames line is at all connected with the Amos line in Barter's Tree. In fact, one of them is Succession Church of Scotland, so Presbyterian, and your ones are Church of England. So they're separated by church and by state.
Okay.
So we had a good look at your DNA. We looked for any kind of connection between you and anyone who might have shared anything in common with the Barter line. And nothing.
Okay.
In fact, you're probably as separate as two humans can be.
Oh, really?
But what I do love about this story, right, is that this is a connection of spirit. Here is a man, a maverick, right, who wasn't afraid of things, who took risks, defied convention. And I'm sitting across the table from another man who's exactly the same. Defied the convention of his family, didn't go into the RAF, test rides motorcycles for a living. Is something of a maverick himself.
Thank you.
So the connection is strong. It's just not a family connection.
It's just spiritual.
It's a spiritual connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, well, that's disappointing, but I would have been surprised had you, but it would have been nice, wouldn't it?
Julian, thank you so much.
Okay, it's a pleasure.
Oh, are you disappointed?
I am disappointed. I can't say I'm completely surprised, and it would have been lovely to find that there was a connection.
Brad said you were part of a family of mavericks.
Yeah.
Is that how you see yourself?
No, I never had. I never had. I'm flattered he said that, actually. I think I probably see myself more as an oddball, as maybe a square peg, round hole kind of guy, but never thought of myself as a maverick before.
Julian, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Now, back to Norma Shaw, whose connection to King Solomon's mines may not have been exactly what she'd hoped for. But will she have better luck with her final mystery about her great-great-great-grandfather?
So, Norma, you had another question about your family's connection with India.
Yes,
So this is Eliza and John Ramsey.
yes. My great-grandparents.
And what specifically were you trying to find out?
Well, when I came across my great-grandmother's birth certificate, I found out that she was born in India before it partitioned and became Pakistan. And I was intrigued because then I found that her father served over there, John Ramsey, and he also died there. So I was very curious to find out where he was and what happened to him.
And you're actually trying to find out where John's buried.
Yes.
So we've got some really interesting stuff to tell you. Here we have the marriage certificate, right? This is for John, Eliza's dad, and Mary Ann Morritt. And what this does is this tells us in 1864 that John is married in Middlesex, right? So we know they're in England and puts him at a place at a point in time. And I want to have a look now at Eliza Ramsey. So this is a transcript of Eliza's birth record. What you can see about this is place of birth. A year later, 1865, where are they? They're in Sabatho, which is in India. It's about 300 miles north of New Delhi.
Right.
So it's right at the top part of India. So he's in London 1 year. The next year, his daughter is born in India. What's taking him there? He served in the army. He was actually a tailor in the army. Now, this is a period in history when it's the start of the British rule in India. So they needed men, right? They needed men to expand the British Empire and expand the colonies. And so he went in to the regiment. And you can see him moving about the country. And the way you can trace him is from the birth of his children. He moves around a little bit, maybe 100, 200 miles away from there. So this is a map of India at that time.
Right.
So just to put it into context, the area that we're talking about is around here. I can't imagine what it was like to go from London to that spot on the map at that point in history. It's quite a challenging environment. We've got some great information now, so we're able to build this family tree out. Here we can see John and Marianne with their 3 children, Eliza, Robert, and William. And look at when John dies, 1872. He's a young man. Right? He's 32 years old. Marianne is a young woman. He leaves behind a young family. I can't imagine what it would have been like for her and the kids. We know he's in India, but for you, the question is, where in India? Because it's a big country.
Mm. And what happened to him afterwards? Was he brought back, or was he buried there?
This is a burial register.
Right.
For John Ramsay, right? Which tells us that he's actually buried in the ground in India. It says there, 1872, January 11th, John Ramsay, 32 years, Sergeant, Master Tailor. It gives the regiment cause of death, which translates into modern parlance as essentially fever. Right. So it could have been malaria, could have been anything, but it was essentially the final cause of death was a fever.
Right.
And it, of course, it gives us a place. Dugshai.
Sure.
Right? So we know where in India. Now, normally when you're doing family history, this might be a spot where you'd stop. But we were all so engrossed in this story that we just wanted to push it that little bit harder. And so there's one more thing we've got to show you. And it's this. This is his headstone in India.
Wow.
And you can see there that it was erected by his widow.
Gosh. That's amazing. Can't believe you found that. I really can't. It's like the end of the story, really.
Norma, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That's marvellous.
So, Norma, you got rather more than you bargained for today.
I got a lot more than I bargained for today. That was just amazing.
What was it like to see the picture of the gravestone for the first time?
Absolutely amazing. It is nice to know that there is something that commemorates him way back when.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much for asking me. It's been an absolutely wonderful experience.
Good.
So, My Family Secrets Revealed has confirmed the location of Norma's great-great-great-grandfather's burial place as Dugshai, a town in northern India. We've also uncovered a link between her grandfather and the man who inspired the main character in the novel King Solomon's Mines. What a fantastic result for the family.
Well, it's been an exciting day here in Cheshire, solving mysteries and finding lost family. Do join us next time when we're going to be giving people the chance to find their place in history. Goodbye.